Let's talk about Skyrim. I love Skyrim. Skyrim is a game that the minute I started playing it, the minute I saw my little brother playing it, the whole thing, I love it for so many reasons. But today I want to talk about Skyrim from the perspective of a gamer with neurological motor disabilities playing. Because this is a huge thing that comes up a lot. There are a lot of gamers out there that have physical, neurological disabilities that affect how they play games and what kinds of games they choose. So to keep it really brief and just to overview really quick so we're all on the same page, I had a prenatal stroke. And that means that I had a stroke before I was born, and it created a dead space in my brain about the size of a quarter probably when I was born, and then over time it filled in, and it looks like about the size of a dime now in my adult head. And I've had brain scans ever since I was little. I've had a lot of migraine issues, so they check to make sure that everything's okay every few years, and progressively it looks smaller and smaller just because everything else grows and grows and fills in the dead space. But it's pretty much on the left hemisphere side, and it's farther back, away from the frontal lobe, and it's about midway around here, and then you would have to go in like about an inch or an inch and a half to hit the spot. What I was told by doctors when I was, well, not told directly, but what the doctors told my parents and then later would tell me as I grew up when I would see the neurologist alone, is that as far as they could tell, it was primarily affecting the motor coordination of the right side of my body. It would probably cause what you would kind of call retardation of the motor control and the functionality of everything on the right side of my body, and that they really couldn't predict how it would affect me long term. I was diagnosed when I was about 6 years old, and they just couldn't guess at the time going forward what that would mean. But in terms of gaming and everything related to how I interact with video games, what it means is that my right hand is very, very bad at switching buttons on the controller pad, or just in general reaching around any kind of a control setup and doing much of anything. I can position it over a button or over a trigger or something, and I can at will, with a slight delay, pretty much use it to hit a button repeatedly. And this is why, even though I really love story and things like that, I tend to stick towards brawlers, or I tend to stick towards much simpler games where I can button mash, because my right hand can button mash, but it has a very difficult time moving around the controller overall. So when this comes to Skyrim, it has affected how I play my character, because in Skyrim and in most of the Elder Scrolls games, while there is a main plot and a main story, you are allowed to pretty much create whatever kind of a character you want and use whatever kind of weapon set you want within the fantasy setting. And you can use whatever kind of schools of magic that exist in that world, and you can really develop your own playstyle. So I really want to quickly just show, this is the controller I've been using for Skyrim lately. I picked up the game recently again because I've always had a haphazard connection to it. I've never owned it directly myself, or it's never been on my computer or on my console. It's always been I've been around Skyrim, so I played it on somebody else's device. But I finally have a solid access to Skyrim without any interruption. So as you can see with the control stick, with the controller, my left hand is pretty much over here, and so I have full range of motion and everything going on with my left hand, so I can move around the world pretty darn easily. I can use all the trigger buttons here, and this zone is cool, and this is fine. The problem is that this side of the controller, I have a very hard time moving my fingers between the buttons and going between the control stick, the buttons, things like that. What I usually do is I can just plant my right thumb on the stick and use it to look around the world, because it's a first-person game for the most part, and that's not too hard. And then I can have one finger on one button. One of my biggest problems is when I suddenly go into battle and I have to draw my weapons, or like if I need to use the shout feature, which is mapped to one of these triggers up here, one of these shoulder trigger buttons up here. That can be a bit difficult to just move my finger from one button down here up to one of these up here. The controller could be remapped in general, but still it kind of requires two hands to play. So what I ended up doing was that I came up with a playstyle, and I first experimented with this in Oblivion, and then I continued this in Skyrim, and it's been pretty successful, is that I wield a mace and I wield a heal spell. And so I'm running around the world and I am just hitting one button. I'm just attacking, with one of the, I think it's one of the shoulder buttons. Maybe I'm wrong. No. I forget. But I'm hitting with the mace, and then I heal myself, as sort of a countermeasure. And then I try to make sure that my character has light armor so that I can run backwards or run away and heal while running away, and then rush towards the enemy again and whack, and then run backwards and heal. And I thought I would share this with you because somebody saw me play a little while ago and they were really confused why I set up my character the way it's set up. They're like, why don't you have more types of healing magic? Why do you just sort of lean on one healing spell? Or why don't you have a different kind of weapon or a different weapon setup? Why don't you have a shield and a sword? Or why don't you do this or try that? Or I think this might be more effective or that. And when I told them that it was totally based around how my hands can manipulate the controller, that really caught my friend off guard, because they just never thought about how you would set up a game based on personal limitations. So that's how I play Skyrim, and I've had a lot of fun doing that over the years. Every time I get a hold of it, I set up a character pretty much like that. Usually I would go with an Argonian, just because every time I play a fantasy game, I really like to be the most monstrous kind of race available in the character creation screen. This time around I chose a high elf, because in Skyrim high elves can kind of look like gray aliens, and I just decided to try to mix it up a little. I haven't noticed too much of a difference, but people seem to like me a lot more. So yay, Skyrim's racist, but that's cool. And I've had a different experience this time, because I actually chose a different race this time instead of sticking with Argonian. So that's cool. And I don't know where to take this video beyond here, so I'll just kind of close it, but I wanted to share with you how I play Skyrim, how I play a role-play action game, and how my personal issues affect how I choose to play it. I've seen a lot of gamers with disabilities choose very different ways to play games. I will just mention one instance really quick. I have a friend who has a very hard time seeing. He's very vision impaired, so he plays games with he plays shooters or first-person shooters with a sniper rifle, and then he sits very close to the screen, and then he uses the magnification of the sniper rifle on top of that to help him hit targets, and he's actually highly effective. We've played split-screen games like sort of GoldenEye 64 style games together, and he's very, very competent in that way, but it's because, you know, he found a way to adjust the gameplay to fit his needs. So thank you for listening to this, and I'm curious if you've set up a game in a way that fits your needs, and it doesn't mean or have to mean that like you have a specific kind of disability and you need to do it a certain way, but even just, you know, do you have a preference of how to interact with a game that's different than how the game might have assumed people would interact with it? And, you know, is it a more effective way, or is it less effective, or is it like less effective but it makes you feel more comfortable with the game, and so that improves your gaming experience overall regardless? Just curious to hear about that. So thank you for watching. Bye.